Perfect. I have Dan, Karen, and Gustavo here. Maybe we start with a quick introduction. Gustavo, you just gave a speech, but some people might have joined afterwards. So maybe you can give a quick introduction of what you're doing and what's actually your computer vision use case.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Gustavo. I'm part of EDF R&D. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah, so I'm a part of EDF, Research and Development. I work in a team called Digital Innovation. We explore new emerging technologies and digital trends to understand how they can impact the energy sector and how we can use them to support the business. And I just presented a talk about automatic defect detection in images from wind turbines using computer vision.
Perfect. Karan, do you want to move on?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Karan Bedi. I work for Avery Dennison, which is a material science company, where I'm the lead innovator at the Digital Innovation Center of Excellence. My particular area of focus is promoting the use of AI, machine learning, data science within the organization. I have a specific focus on computer vision, and not shameless plug. I have a talk tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m., talking about how we are using computer vision at Avery Dennison. So I hope that I look forward to presenting to you, and I hope you find it useful tomorrow.
Dan, do you want to move on?
Sure. I'm Dan. I head up an innovation team at BT within the Data and AI Solutions team. And my role is broader than just computer vision. It's anything that can be innovative within BT as it moves from being a telco to a techco.
Perfect. Thank you. I have one question to you guys. I think we have 45 minutes for the panel, right? We're just seeing here the clock ticking down. I just wanted to make sure that we are, 45. Okay, perfect. So, as stated, we will have a panel where we are discussing driving business value and avoiding the shiny object syndrome. And we are all doing things with a clear purpose, not just in computer vision in general. In the business context, we are always doing it with a clear intent. The problem with computer vision is that things are moving extremely fast, right? We have talked about it. There's something new coming up all the time, and it's actually hard to not lose the focus. And in this kind of panel, we want to discuss actually how to cut through the noise and really identify the projects that are worth it. And I would like to start a discussion and ask you, Gustavo, what are the areas in computer vision where you see a lot of potential at the moment?
Well, computer vision for identifying different type of objects or surfaces may be a little bit related to the earlier talk by Shell, where you can use this type of technology to identify very complex elements or machines, or not only the objects, but also surfaces, so that you are able to carry out inventory, for example, or like remote monitoring of different sites. I think that's a really interesting use case. And yeah, I guess in this area of like object detection and image segmentation, development along this area is exciting for me.
Perfect. Karen, what about you?
So Carl, I'm going to frame this in terms of application. So in our particular context, Avery Dennison being a manufacturing company, our people and our product are two very, very important things for us. So the way that we're looking at computer vision or deploying computer vision is making sure that our people are safe, right? So processes that we have in place to ensure safety, they're being followed, and the probability of accidents is reduced. And then also making sure that our, let's say, assembly lines and supply chains or internal supply chains are robust and the quality of our products is maintained across the entire value chain.
Perfect. Dan, what's your take on this?
I've got no take on it. I'm not really led by what computer vision might be good at doing, but my focus is so much more on what does the customer need, what's the problem that needs solving. I'm pretty confident that computer vision can solve the problem if we can find out what it is.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we all know, right? I mean, when we're looking at whatever papers with code, whatever, right? I mean, there's like something new every day, right? I mean, when you're like reading blogs, there's like always a new approach to solve the problems, and everyone is promising that he or she is doing it much better than everyone before, right? So how are you actually really like? I mean, how are you dealing like with this in your case, Gustavo? I mean, are you whatever like following the things, or you just say, oh, whatever, I'm just ignoring what is happening outside of my silo?
It is important to keep yourself updated, of course. A big part on deciding how you're going to approach a problem from the technical aspect, from the type of model or technology you're going to use, it definitely comes from experience, for sure. However, at the same time, it is important to be up to date on what are the new trends, what type of new models are coming out, what are people doing research on recently, and to be able to understand the usages and limitations so that you know, okay, just because there is some fancy new paper coming out, it doesn't mean that it will automatically work the best for my particular use case, right? So I think it's important a little bit of a balance of both. One, trust your experience for sure, but second, do keep yourself updated. For example, me personally, I follow a bunch of labs and researchers on Twitter, for example. So at some point it became impossible to just keep up with the archive every day just because of the volume of new papers being published. But I now use Twitter as my feed to see, like what things are coming up. And then from the ones that I think are interesting, maybe I'll look a little bit more into that. But yeah, always stick to always what you understand. And the new things that are coming out, try to understand them and digest them. Don't just follow blindly the new trends, but like put them to your use case.
Yeah, but I mean, you're following like certain sources and you're pre-selecting and then whatever, like giving it to your team to validate. Yeah. Okay. Understood. Karen, what about you?
I will echo a little bit of what what Gustavo just said, right? So for me, it's important, especially in my role, to have things that are explainable. So the simpler the solution is, the better, because the easier it is to explain and show to your stakeholders. But then at the same time, you have to keep an eye on the market. If there's something that helps you do the thing you want to do faster, quicker, better, then by all means, like, apply it, right? But simplicity and speed, I think they are the two metrics that I always look at. And I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So always there's a day a week. Fridays is my day of research. I don't do any work on Fridays. I just look at papers, and my team hates me on Monday morning because I come up to them with so many ideas for things that they should be looking at that they dread my Friday homework. But that's the way I do it.
Wow, every week,
Yeah,
full day.
Full day. It's learning and research, because that's the only way to keep up. Otherwise, you just get inundated with so much information. It's impossible.
Crazy. So you're like pre-filtering everything and then give it like to your team Monday morning.
Yeah, and I value their opinions as well. So right, it's not just top down. I want them to do the same. So I encourage them to do the same thing as well.
So how are they actually getting to work on something else than all your input? I mean, I would guess if you're like reading like.
That's why I keep fighting my boss about getting a bigger team, because there's so much more we want to do.
Okay, perfect. That's very, very interesting. I mean, how do you decide in which projects to actually invest then?
So my team, we've developed an innovation system called RapidWorks, which is based on the Lean Startup methodology. And so we've got a very strict set of funnel maths that we follow. And we have metered funding, which means that in order to advance to your next stage, you have to pass certain criteria. So certain questions that we're asking at each stage in order that you can advance to the next one, to unlock the next funding, unlock the next resource. Prior to that, we have quite a robust triage process as well. So we've got an ideas hopper, and we have a 1-page, 1-hour rule. You can write a 1-hour proposal on a 1-pager. And that gets scored against various criteria. The top 25% of those get creamed off, and they go into the customer discovery phase of work. So it sounds quite a boring, methodical way of working, but it's the only way of handling people like Karen given us all these ideas, and we need to work out which ones of these are we going to play with.
It actually sounds super amazing. I mean, can you like quickly summarize this lean startup kind of like a methodology that you're following?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's familiar with a build, measure, learn loop, and what the lean startup approach is that we follow. It's a case of taking the risk out of our bets, right? So we're constantly looping in from the most uncertain assumptions to the most certainty. And as by experimenting, it could be anywhere from a survey or an interview all the way through to an MVP, proof of concept, a prototype. And then we have a series of stages along the funnel. And basically, you need to kiss a lot of frogs, because at every stage in the funnel, we're killing 50% of our ideas. So you feed in 16, and one comes out at the end. So start with customer discovery, then start exploring the solution, then a proof of concept, then stage validation, and then you're off to market.
Wow, sounds awesome. I mean, let's start like at the very beginning, right? I mean, who is actually coming up with these ideas? You said like 1 hour, one paper, like
anyone.
rule?
Anyone. We've got people across the organisation who can feed things in. I think to your previous question about how do you avoid chasing that new shiny thing, or the next big thing, or having a top-down approach or anything like this, I think it's just crucial that the intern in the team and the MD or the CEO, what they're trying to achieve goes through the same rigor. Otherwise, you get these sort of, hippo-type projects that, get bulldozed through, which don't necessarily make commercial sense. So, it's just a case of making sure that whoever comes up with the idea goes through the same rigor in order to advance.
Okay, so whatever Karan is writing, like his 10 papers on like Friday.
Yeah.
So and I mean, who is like judging like these ideas? Is there like a group of people, of experts?
Yeah. So at each stage, there's a growth board.
Mm-hmm.
The growth board could be anything from 1 or 2 people, from your team, all the way through to a senior leader in the organisation. The further you move down the funnel, the more funds are being unlocked. So the more important that decision is. If it's to move from discovery to solution, you're unlocking maybe 1 more human for 1 more month. It's not a big decision. But at the other end, you might be unlocking £2 million for a year, and it becomes a bigger decision. So the person or people making up the board, it's kind of linked to the nature of the decision you're making.
Okay. And I mean, who's like sitting like in the board of like this very first boundaries, like to get into whatever, like this whole process and not being killed right away?
You're looking at him.
It's you. Okay, perfect.
So, Carl, if I might add something here. So, what I'm looking at is, my Friday research is more the technical implementation. But as an organization, to solve this problem of, getting that valuable business case, we've actually created an enterprise-wide innovation portal. So where anybody in the organization, doesn't matter how high or low they are in the cadre of the organization, they are able to give their ideas. And we just operate like an internal Shark Tank, right? So we've got our leadership, the people who own the business, they make the decisions. We create pitch decks and we go and pitch to them to give us the time, the money, the funding, the people that we need in order to bring a business idea to life, right? So it's like they get measured the same way as any other idea. If there's value in your idea, if you have enough belief, if you've done your due diligence, you're going to get the funding. And then, yes, there are stage gates at every you build an MVP, you present that MVP. Is it still valuable? Yes, no. Do we, persevere or perish? That's from the lean startup. So we follow that same model within Avery Dennison as well.
So what is the criteria in stage 1 in your process?
Well, stage 1 criteria is whether or not the hypothesis that we started with is actually proved, right? And is it still valuable enough in order to move forward? So I'll give you an example. One of the use cases that we're working on right now, and I'll be talking about this tomorrow as well, is to validate the quality of the width of the material that we send out to a customer. We put a label on that on the roll that we produce, and there's a number that's written on it, that's the width. We're actually using computer vision and depth perception to try and validate that the number that's printed on it and the actual width is accurate or not. Stage 1, we're still right now working to prove that hypothesis that we can deliver this. We're very close to it, and the review would be with our quality leaders to tell them, okay, look, if we can solve this problem for you, we can reduce 30% of the defective product that you're sending to the customer. We can actually do that math, and then I'm confident that we're going to be allowed to move forward. But if we weren't able to do that, this project would actually get killed and we'd move on to something else.
Wow. So that means like you need to come in already with a prototype into stage 1.
Yeah, well, that's what we're doing. I mean, it's more than just the idea. I believe in giving people something tangible, right? Things that they can hold and feel and touch. Because everybody can talk theory, but unless you put your words to practice, it doesn't really make sense for a lot of people who are still traditionalists, who are still looking at things from a very skeptical, very kind of detached perspective. You have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to give them something that they can believe in and they can actually measure for them to make that shift in their minds.
Exactly. I think to add to that, it's very similar to what we do as well. I want to highlight that it is key to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you are going to be using these solutions, to thoroughly understand their context, because they are the people at the end of the day that are going to fund what you're doing. Of course, as researchers, there are a lot of very interesting ideas that I would love to follow and a lot of cool new stuff coming out. But at the end of the day, okay, everything we're doing is paid by someone, right? So we gotta make sure that what we're doing is adding value to the organization. And in some cases, it doesn't mean that you don't always have freedom. We also have a lot of freedom for researching new things, because in some cases, maybe a client from another business unit will approach us and say, okay, I heard about this new thing, this new research direction. I want you to do some research on this and tell me if this is interesting or not, if we should do like more about it. So it's a little bit of everything, but you have to always keep the user in the loop, thoroughly understand their context and their pain points, so that they can, so that you can move forward and select the projects that are actually going to create value.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know it, right? I mean, you come with an idea, you're proving, right? I mean, that it's working, like in your case. But I mean, it's always super hard to actually attach the real costs to it, right? Because I mean, it's like this classical thing. Okay, it's super cool idea. So how long does it take, right? I mean, how much resources do you need? I mean, how are you dealing like with this problem? Maybe you're starting this time.
Yeah, so we have more or less a standard methodology to come up with some budgets sometimes. And a big part of that methodology is guesstimating, to be honest. So there are some things that you can put some numbers to, and some things that you can estimate. Okay, maybe you can put a number to 1 day of work of one person, right? But then you can estimate, okay, how long would it take to source a data set, because we don't have any data to begin with, right? So, okay, identify a data set, do some QA analysis to make sure that the data is usable, data cleaning. So all of that stuff is just one work package. And then you can say, okay, this is gonna take more or less this many weeks, 2-3 weeks. And then you can say, okay, for all of this, based on time, maybe it's like this much. And then, okay, for the next part, what are you gonna do? You're gonna try to train some models. You're gonna need to use some GPUs. You could be doing things on the cloud, like AWS, for example. So all of these things have a cost attached. So basically, you draw from previous experience, from previous projects, to say, okay, well, last time we took this much time to do this phase, but actually we were delayed because something happened. So now this time we should take this into account, and let's add a little bit more days, or things like that.
Okay, cool. What's your take, Karan?
We make a clear distinction between what's pure research and what's scalable and implementable. So on the scalable and implementable side of things, we we consider things like, okay, is this a totally new idea, or is there precedent in maybe our industry or other industries where this idea has already been improved? So if that's a yes, that's a plus against that idea. Also, internally, we look at how many places. We have more than 200 locations where we manufacture our product, or we have distribution centers. So how many locations will this problem, does this problem exist at? How many places can we actually apply, deploy, and replicate that solution that we build? And also based on our experience, right? What we've been doing this for 3 years. We have a sense of how long it would take, how much budget it's going to take in order for us to build that stage 1 product, right? We're not looking beyond stage 1, right? We're only looking at stage 1 because we know that that's the first stage gate. So we use a combination. So this combination of information to decide on which use case to go after.
Then how are you estimating costs in like this early phase?
Well, I mean, for the way we approach it, we're not doing anything. We're not building anything at the beginning. So the cost is the people who are exploring whether there's a customer problem worth solving. As we get further down the funnel, the cost remains the people. It's just more people. So we operate a sort of like a flow to work model. So for every idea that's getting killed, the people that are working on it flow into another opportunity. And then we have essentially a core team like your main army, and then we've got a bunch of reservists who are ready to be pulled into jobs as required. So we just, beyond that, the money that goes in is, once we're in the stage validation process, it's a percentage of revenue.
Okay, understood. I mean, you most likely have like more projects, right? I mean, that are passing this gate that then you can actually really then work on. I mean, how are you prioritizing, like, even like the ones that are passing like this gate? I mean, how are you prioritizing them?
So one of the things that's quite important to us is having a balanced portfolio of opportunities. So if we've got 8 people who are able to each explore a different thing, we need to have a dashboard where we can get a decent view of have we got a good split between opportunities at different stages through the funnel? Have we got a decent spread of B2B versus B2C, of easy wins versus big bets? And if we're focusing on sustainability, say, have we got we don't want to put all of our eggs in the green finance basket when we need to be focusing maybe more on EVs, maybe on something else. So just looking at portfolio, it tends to be a good way for us to prioritize.
Okay, understood. How are you doing this, Karen?
Well, we look at it from a couple of different lenses. One, if an idea relates to, let's say, a core opportunity or core kind of strategic direction for our business that already, places it higher than other ideas. The level of business sponsorship that we have, if we have direct engagement from a stream leader, a business sponsor, that again is an indicator that idea has more merit, more value. Do we already have the resources, the technology, the expertise that we need in order to implement that idea? That's another factor. So, I mean, if these 3 would be, let's say, the key criteria that we look at in terms of selection, because as you said, right, you've got a big hopper, and you've got to prioritize where you're going to put your money and time and resources. So that's what we use at Avery Dennison.
Similarly, I think for EDF, EDF is quite a big company. So in some cases, it just comes down to, okay, who's paying for this, and like how much are they putting down, and what type of timelines were agreed upon. It is often the case that you already have a calendar of projects that you have to work on, and then to prioritize, basically, you just look at, okay, which of these are part of the strategic directions of the company, how much money are these people paying, these kind of things. And when it comes to balancing that with new ideas or innovations that explore within the team, and that's something that we try to do sporadically, but I don't know if it's maybe a good or a bad thing, but we always do have to prioritize these other type of big projects that are already paid for, agreed for, and then later we will have time to explore this type of new innovations or new things. So yeah, it's maybe one of the disadvantages of being a research department in a large corporation, that everything is already, someone is already paying for this and they are expecting a result by some time. And in some cases there may also be some level of politics involved as well. So yeah, okay, the bigger the organization, it becomes a little bit more tricky, and maybe you have to follow more into more standard kind of things.
Okay, let's say whatever, like a project is passing this gate, right? I mean, so the company has said, okay, we are investing into whatever this project. I mean, the problem is you always have like whatever a certain assumption at the beginning, right? But I mean, it might turns out that it's wrong, right? I mean, how are you figuring out along this way, right? I mean, where are you having like checkpoints where you're making sure whatever that you're checking that the project is still on track?
Well, that's why it is key to have the users involved from the start and the domain experts from the start. It is necessary to understand their context, their pain points, so that you can formulate exactly what you want to try to do, and that it is actually useful for someone, that they are actually going to use this type of solution, and to keep them invested in the whole process, to define a clear scope, to keep track that everything is going on time, and to define from the start what success looks like. What is the challenge that your users are facing, and how do we know when you're done? How do you know when you're finished? And this has to be something that you define in collaboration with the users or with the domain experts. And that's how that it has to be from the start, from phase one. And then moving forward, we try to do iterative development, where we'll start with some basic product and then optimize and iterate on top of that a little bit, and always keep the user engaged, always transparency, keep them informed on what is going on, have regular meetings. In some projects that may mean quarterly meetings, in some other projects that may even mean weekly meetings. So always have to keep the user engaged, so that you can say, okay, this thing that we talked about and we promised to you last year, we are working on it. This is what we have so far. These are the challenges that we have now, and these are the next things that we're going to focus on. And if for whatever reason, because of course a company and the market is a dynamic environment, maybe at some point their use case will change, their priorities will change, maybe some things could change. That is how you keep informed about that, and how you keep yourself updated about that. If your user is having different priorities or is concerned with other things, then okay, you should be flexible enough to adapt up to some point. But yeah, constant communication and transparency is key.
Karan, how are you getting aware that a project is getting off track?
Well, we follow a similar approach to what Gustavo just outlined. We don't start projects until we, what we call our squad is formed, and the squad is obviously a data scientist, ML engineer, maybe a project manager, and then another key part is the subject matter expert, product owner, whatever you want to call them. Without them, we don't start the project. And we also build iteratively. We follow an MVP approach, right? So we will outline what the different stages are of what we're going to be building. We manage scope very, very objectively. Scope creep actually does not happen. If somebody wants to add something new, that's, we're going to have to reassess and reevaluate, because it does not fit our timeline. But the key part is frequent feedback, immediate involvement from the product owner, and that kind of helps us identify if something is going off track very, very quickly, and then we're able to either decide do we want to reframe the problem and scrap what we're doing and move on from there, or do we want to completely put the kibosh on things, or do we want to persevere? So we do it every week, every month, every quarter, depending on how big of an iteration that we're running.
Dan, how are you doing this? How are you making sure that projects are not getting off track once they've passed the first boundary?
Just let them.
Just let them.
Yeah, follow. If the customer problem evolves, if it follows a different course from what you're expecting, my job is to follow that course, follow it up. Because if we doggedly pursue something, and I'm not being critical by saying doggedly, but if we were to doggedly pursue something and it deviated from the customer problem, it would fail. There's no point pursuing that. So, my job is to really focus on letting it evolve and exploring those issues. And we see it all the time that we think we start one project, it turns into something completely different. And as long as it keeps on solving the problem, a real problem, then I support it.
So, I mean, you all just mentioned, right? I mean, it's like extremely important to have a customer focus. I mean, how are you making sure that the customer is like integrated into the whole process from start to end? Then,
I think the thing that I talk about most with my team is about not letting perfection be the enemy of good. So I think we're all so desperate to show the customer something brilliant and perfect and shiny, but we involve customers right from the idea, right from is this even a problem for you? We work in more of a sort of co-creating type of way with our pilot customers, and just keep that feedback loop going. They're happy, in our experience, to see something that's like a scrappy napkin sketch. They don't need to see something all singing or dancing. And so it's just involving them as early as possible, as frequently as possible. I think the further along you get, the more quantitative the feedback needs to be. But beyond that, it's just a case of constantly talking to customers. When I first started doing my role, I was staggered at how little customers were involved in processes. And I think it's the same in every organization I've worked in. And you see it differently in different parts of an organization. But obsessing about the customer, for me, is the only way to keep yourself honest.
how many customers are you involving in a project, right? I mean, I'm saying I have the problem, but it might be just me, right? I mean, the rest of the world doesn't care.
Sure. So say it's a consumer customer, we need to be running really massive experiments. You know, it needs to be statistically relevant. Mm. If we're talking about problems in supply chain in, massive multinationals, there's this much smaller pool of potential customers. It needs to be a much bigger problem. So, it's kind of how long is a piece of string, but for me, never enough. Counterpoint to that is you can't just keep on talking to customers and letting that sort of hold you back from advancing.
Okay. Karan, how are you involving the customers throughout the cycle?
I don't really have anything additional to say about, with regards to how Dan just put it. We do the same. We involve the customer right from the start. I mentioned the Avery Dennison innovation platform, right? And our process of pitching for ideas, that actually helps us weed out the ideas that may have very, very little impact or very, very localized impact, and only work on the ones that have a significantly larger impact, because we will not get the funding to move forward with an idea if it doesn't have that, that necessary level, or it doesn't meet that threshold of cost versus value. And I think I already mentioned this, a minute ago, that we don't start a project unless we have the right level of involvement. These squads that we form, they have to have the customer in them. Our first prototype will just be, again, a back of napkin sketch to validate with the customer, this is what we're going to build. This is going to be our next iteration. Does this make sense? When we get a yes, we move on to the next stage.
How many customers are you involving, like, in your products?
Well, it depends on the scope, right? So if it's a global scope, then we might involve people from more than one region. If it's a single regional scope, then we might just work with one or two people. There's no real formula that I can tell you, but the more locations that a particular idea might apply to, because it's not like we have a homogeneous setup everywhere, right? the lighting, the facilities, everything, especially with computer vision, the things that matter, they might be different in different places. So we try and involve as many people from as many locations as possible when we're designing something, just in order to make sure that we have all the perspectives that we need when we start.
I mean, very similar to what they mentioned already. You have to involve the customer from the start. You have to have them on board, because at the end of the day, they are going to go to their manager to ask for funding. Their manager is going to go to their director to ask for funding. So if you don't have the customer on board from the start, there's no project, period. That's it. And then on top of that, just iterating, as I mentioned, keeping them on the loop with frequent discussions, frequent updates, transparency to understand how things are going and understand if their problem or their situation is evolving. And in terms of the scope of how many customers to involve, these kind of things, we tend to do it a little bit more focused, more localized. There will usually be 1 or 2 people representing their area, or like explaining to us the problem they want to solve, and keeping follow up on the projects, kind of things. I think the fewer people from a managing perspective is easier to keep, instead of having a lot of people involved at the same time. So that makes it a little bit easier. But we also try to do things that could be scalable in the future. So, for example, if we develop some solution for one of our nuclear power plants, right? Okay, maybe we'll be communicating specifically with the team at this plant, but we have a mindset where the solution can be eventually, industrialized and could be rolled over to other plants. And if it comes to that stage, then it's even better, because the people, your customers, are now going to be the championing your product for the other sites to adopt it. So yeah, it's important to keep a close relation, not too many people involved, but yeah, a continuous communication.
Cool. I mean, we all always like to talk about our success stories, but most of the time it's actually the things that went wrong, where we really got some learnings out. So what have been projects like which failed on your side, and what have you learned from it?
Right, so excellent follow-up, because this is closely related to what we discussed just before. A few years ago, there was a project for building, using VR to build a digital copy of the control room in a nuclear power station for helping with training, these kind of things. However, the issue back then, that was quite a few years ago, was that this was an idea that came up from the team, but actually the people that were going to be using this were not actually involved from the start. They were only onboarded at a later stage of the project. And then, okay, at the end, the team built the VR environment, to mimic all of that stuff, and we handed over to them. And then, like, a year after it went by, and we heard about it, and like, oh yeah, how is that VR thing going? It's like, no one is using it, because the customer wasn't involved with it from the start. It wasn't solving an active problem that they were wanting to solve. And also, this lack of communication made it easier for them to adopt this type of solution. And it's also a little bit, because for that particular one, because of the nature of what they're doing. In a nuclear power plant, you have strict protocols that are tried and tested that you have to follow. So people tend to be a little bit reactive if you want to change these kind of things, especially if you're involving some new technology or some new stuff that in their perception, it may not be as tested or as reliable as these other things that they have been doing for decades already. And of course, you have to understand, because of the sensitivity of the work they do, okay, sure, that's okay. But yeah, it is exactly highlighting the point that we were talking about just before. It is of paramount importance to have the customer engaged from the start. Otherwise, you're going to be building something, and then at the end, no one is going to use it, and that's going to be pointless.
It's actually funny that you mentioned the VR case. I mean, I'm asking like these questions a lot of times, and I have like a lot of interviews, and I'm a lot of like conferences, like we have like offices everywhere, and I'm always asking this question, and they hear like quite often this VR case. So a lot of companies have like invested in VR and it went completely off. And so it's funny that you brought this as well. So I think, or it seems that VR is not there, or at least the adoption is not there. Yeah, just an interesting side note here from my side. Karan, what about you?
I have two maybe examples. One is not really a failure of technology, but more maybe change management, and also, I guess, in, let's say, regional factors. For instance, one of the use cases that we've been working on is using CCTV camera footage for, let's say, analyzing whether or not there are safety incidents likely occurring. We're able to deploy that in Asia, but when I had the conversation with the, let's say, the VP of Supply Chain and Ops in Europe, I immediately got a no as an answer, because his answer literally was, I do not want Big Brother watching over my people. And I can understand totally that sentiment, right? Europe, I think, has a different perspective when it comes to privacy, and it does not matter how valuable a solution might be. Some lines you don't cross, or at least don't cross now, maybe in the future sometime. And the other use case that I would say is actually also related, a VR sort of / metaverse use case. This was in the kind of the middle of the pandemic, right? Everybody's sitting at home, staring at the screen. All of us have Zoom fatigue, or whatever platform you use, you want to call it. And we came up with we talked to some of our leaders, and they're like, we really want to get together again. So we said, okay, there's a few platforms that you can use to approximate this sense of coming together. So we set up a VR platform. We got all our people together, and for that hour that they were in there, they all had fun. But after that, everybody had a headache, and they didn't want to do it again. So the VR as a technology is really cool, and I mean, at this time right now, it's still very gimmicky. As long as we don't solve that problem, that the human interacting with that environment, that problem of fatigue and that problem of not naturalness, and that problem is going to get solved. There's so many companies working on it. It's just a matter of time. But today, I mean, that's the thing that stops from people adopting that and that becoming mainstream.
100%, I'm with you. Yeah. Dan, what about you? Which project went completely wrong in your career, and what have you learned from it?
I mean, so many.
Pick one.
Well, I mean, I could pick any number of them, because you just feel so terrible when these things happen, and sometimes they're really expensive for you or for the company that you're working for, or the startup. And I think about it an awful lot, because now I'm in a position where we're killing projects left, right, and center, and this word failure, it gets used quite a lot, but we're trying to reframe that thing and trying to help people celebrate that. But it's hard, If you've been working on something even if it's in a conceptual stage, it becomes your baby and you really believe in it. And so the moment you get up in front of a board and they kill the idea, you feel crap, and there's nothing you can do about it. So we're trying to foster a culture where we celebrate these stop decisions. It's not easy, but look at it the other way. If one of these VR situations, instead of if the customer had resonated or failed to resonate at the beginning before the investment, and you're able to say, okay, let's stop this, they're not going to use it, then what have you achieved? Well, you've saved the company a couple of million quid or whatever it happens to be. That's a great success, and that's the
reframing.
Exactly. Yeah. So we try and reframe it. I haven't answered your question. I'm not going to tell you about my big failures, but we have them every day.
Perfect. I mean, I think we are running out of time. Gustavo, Karan, Dan, thanks a lot for all these insights, and thanks a lot for listening. I think we are now going over to the last session of today. Give us just 1 second to prepare the stage, and then we're moving on. Thanks a lot.
Carl, thanks for having us.
Thank you.